The Galactic Council had made what they considered a brilliant decision. Send Vex-Nine, their most accomplished telepath, to extract information from the newly captured human specimen. After all, what could possibly go wrong? They were dealing with a primitive species that had barely figured out faster-than-light travel. How complex could one human mind really be? Oh, if only they knew. Vex-Nine strutted into the interrogation chamber with all the confidence of someone who had never met a thought they couldn't read. His cranial tendrils twitched with anticipation as he surveyed the scene. The human sat there, bound to a bioneural chair, looking remarkably calm. Suspiciously calm, actually. "Greetings, primitive life form," Vex-Nine announced, his voice dripping with condescension. "I am Vex-Nine of the Zephyrian Collective. Today your mind will be an open book to me." The human, who went by the name Marcus Kane, simply raised an eyebrow. "Oh, really? Well, this should be entertaining." Entertaining? The audacity of this creature. Vex-Nine had extracted secrets from the most guarded minds in the galaxy. He had broken through psychic barriers that had taken centuries to construct. This hairless ape thought it could provide entertainment? "Your bravado is admirable, but pointless," Vex-Nine sneered, his tendrils beginning to glow with psionic energy. "I have read the minds of Arcturian war generals, Syrian spy masters, even a few ethereal monks. Your species' mental defenses are quaint at best." Just one thing before we begin. YouTube tells me 94.3% of you watching aren't subscribed. Subscribing is free. It really supports the channel, and you'll get more amazing HFY sci-fi stories delivered straight to you. Don't miss out. Marcus chuckled, a sound that somehow made Vex-Nine's skin crawl. "You know what? Go ahead. Take a peek. But don't say I didn't warn you." Warning? From a human? Preposterous. Vex-Nine activated his telepathic abilities, sending his consciousness diving toward Marcus's mind like a spear through water. He expected to encounter the usual human mental landscape: disorganized thoughts, primitive emotions, maybe some embarrassing memories about bodily functions. Instead, he slammed face first into something that defied all logic. The first thing Vex-Nine noticed was the noise. Not sound, exactly, but a constant, overwhelming cacophony of mental activity that made absolutely no sense. It was as if someone had taken every song, every conversation, every random thought, and every piece of information that had ever existed and played them all simultaneously at maximum volume. "What in the seven hells?" Vex-Nine muttered, his confidence wavering for the first time in decades. But that was just the beginning. As he pushed deeper, trying to find some semblance of order in the chaos, he discovered something truly horrifying. The human mind wasn't just thinking about the present moment. It was thinking about 17 different scenarios simultaneously, analyzing past conversations from 3 years ago, planning dinner for next Tuesday, wondering if that weird smell in the air conditioning was mold, calculating the optimal trajectory for a theoretical space mission to Alpha Centauri, composing a strongly worded letter to a customer service representative, trying to remember the lyrics to an ancient Earth song called "Never Gonna Give You Up," and contemplating the existential implications of whether hot dogs were sandwiches. All at the same time. "This is impossible," Vex-Nine gasped, his tendrils beginning to tremble. "No mind can process this much information simultaneously." Marcus's voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere within the mental space. "Oh, that's just the surface level, buddy. You haven't even gotten to the good stuff yet." "The good stuff? There was more?" Vex-Nine pressed on, driven by a combination of professional pride and morbid curiosity. What he found next nearly shattered his sanity on the spot. Memories. Thousands upon thousands of memories, but not stored in any logical order. A childhood birthday party was filed next to detailed specifications for nuclear fusion reactors. A romantic kiss was catalogued alongside instructions for assembling furniture without using the provided manual. Every embarrassing moment from Marcus's teenage years was cross-referenced with his grandmother's cookie recipes and the complete works of something called Monty Python. But the most terrifying part wasn't the chaos, it was the fact that somehow, impossibly, it all made sense to the human. Marcus navigated this mental maze with the ease of someone walking through their own home in the dark. "How?" Vex-Nine whispered, his voice cracking with strain. "How do you function with all of this noise in your head?" "Noise?" Marcus sounded genuinely confused. "This is just normal thinking. Are you telling me other species don't have 12 different internal monologues running at once?" 12 different internal monologues. Vex-Nine felt something inside his mind snap. He had encountered hive minds before, collective consciousnesses that shared thoughts among thousands of individuals. But this was something far worse. This was one individual mind that somehow contained the mental activity of a small city. Desperate to escape, Vex-Nine tried to pull back, but found himself trapped in something that could only be described as a mental quicksand of random associations. Every time he tried to focus on extracting a specific piece of information, his consciousness was yanked in 17 different directions by the sheer gravitational pull of human cognitive chaos. He found himself dragged through memories of Marcus arguing with automated phone systems, composing passive-aggressive emails, trying to fold fitted sheets, and having heated internal debates about whether cereal counted as soup. Each memory spawned dozens of tangential thoughts, which spawned hundreds more, which spawned thousands more, creating an infinite recursive loop of mental activity that threatened to consume Vex-Nine's consciousness entirely. "Please," he gasped, his physical body beginning to convulse in the interrogation chamber. "Make it stop." "Make what stop?" Marcus asked innocently. "I'm just thinking. This is how humans think. Oh, and by the way, you've triggered my anxiety response, so now I'm also simultaneously worried about that presentation I gave in college 15 years ago, wondering if I locked my apartment door this morning, and calculating how many calories are in the sandwich I ate for lunch." The anxiety response was like being hit by a psychic tsunami. Suddenly, Vex-Nine was experiencing every irrational fear, every social anxiety, every moment of self-doubt that Marcus had ever experienced, but amplified and occurring all at once. He was simultaneously afraid of heights, spiders, public speaking, dying alone, running out of money, climate change, forgetting someone's name at a party, and the eventual heat death of the universe. "This is torture!" Vex-Nine screamed, his tendrils flailing wildly as he fought to maintain his grip on sanity. "Torture?" Marcus laughed. "This is just a Tuesday for us." "Oh, speaking of Tuesday, I should probably remember to take out the trash. And I need to call my mom. She's going to be upset if I don't call her. But what if she's busy? What if I'm interrupting something important? Maybe I should text first. But what if she doesn't see the text? What if she thinks I'm being impersonal by texting instead of calling? What if? Stop! Vex-Nine's mental voice cracked like a whip through the chaos. Please! I cannot take any more. But Marcus wasn't done. Oh no, he was just getting started. You know what the really fun part is? This is me on a good day. You should see what it's like when I've had too much coffee, or when I'm trying to fall asleep, or when someone plays that one song that gets stuck in my head for 6 weeks straight. 6 weeks. The same song, playing on repeat in this already overloaded mental space. Vex-Nine began to weep, a sound he hadn't made since he was a youngling. "And don't even get me started on the dreams," Marcus continued conversationally. "Last night I dreamed I was giving a presentation about quantum mechanics to my high school math teacher while being chased by a giant hamburger. The hamburger was upset because I hadn't returned a library book from 1987. The book was about how to properly fold laundry, which is ironic because I still don't know how to fold fitted sheets properly, and neither does anyone else, which is why I think they might be some kind of alien conspiracy designed to drive humans insane. But then again, maybe we're already insane, and fitted sheets are perfectly normal to everyone else in the universe, which would explain why you're having such a hard time dealing with my perfectly normal human thoughts." The stream of consciousness was relentless. Vex-Nine felt his own mental barriers crumbling under the assault of pure, unfiltered human cognition. This wasn't just chaos. This was weaponized chaos. This was chaos that had evolved over millions, years to be the most efficient possible thinking machine, even if it drove every other species in the galaxy completely insane. "I surrender!" Vex-Nine finally screamed, his voice echoing through both the physical and mental planes. "I surrender! Please, just let me go!" Marcus paused in his mental rambling. "Oh, you want to leave?" But we were just getting to the good part. I was about to start thinking about all the times I've said something stupid in social situations and then replayed those conversations in my head for years afterwards, each time thinking of better things I could have said. "No!" Vex-Nine's desperate cry shattered several pieces of equipment in the interrogation chamber. "Mercy! I beg for mercy." The watching council members, who had been observing through remote sensors, exchanged worried glances. Their most powerful telepath was having what appeared to be a complete mental breakdown. His vital signs were spiking dangerously, and his psionic emissions were fluctuating wildly. "Should we terminate the session?" asked Councillor Thane, his blue-scaled fingers hovering over the emergency shutdown controls. "Not yet," replied Councillor Vara, her compound eyes fixed intently on the displays. "We need to know what's happening in there." What was happening was that Vex-Nine had just been introduced to the concept of human cognitive multitasking, and his mind was rejecting it, like a biological system rejecting a foreign organ. Every instinct he had was screaming at him to flee, but he was trapped in the quicksand of Marcus's consciousness like an insect in amber. "The worst part," Marcus continued cheerfully, "is that I'm not even trying to be confusing. This is just how we think. Every human on Earth has a mind like this. Can you imagine what it was like when we first developed language? We had all these thoughts bouncing around in our heads, and we had to figure out how to communicate them to other people who had equally chaotic thought processes. It's a miracle we ever managed to say anything coherent at all." A miracle? Yes, that's exactly what it was. The fact that humanity had managed to develop civilization, despite having minds that operated like malfunctioning quantum computers, was perhaps the most impressive achievement in galactic history. No wonder they had managed to reverse-engineer alien technology so quickly once they encountered it. When your brain was already accustomed to processing 17 different trains of thought simultaneously, understanding a new piece of technology was just another Tuesday. "Please," Vex-Nine whimpered, his once proud telepathic abilities now feeling like a curse. "I will tell the Council anything you want to know. Just please, release me from this nightmare." Marcus sounded genuinely surprised. "Nightmare? But I haven't even started thinking about my existential fears yet." or the time I accidentally called my teacher Mom in 3rd grade, or whether other people can see the tiny floaters in their vision, or if that's just me, or why we park in a driveway and drive on a parkway, or whether aliens think our music is terrible, and, if so, whether they're judging our entire species based on that one pop song that was playing on the radio when they first intercepted our transmissions. The mention of aliens seemed to trigger another cascade of thoughts. Suddenly, Vex-Nine found himself experiencing Marcus's current thought process in real time, wondering if aliens had their own version of reality TV, whether alien teenagers were just as awkward as human teenagers, if aliens had to deal with taxes, whether alien politicians were as incompetent as human ones, and if there was some universal constant that made all sentient species produce terrible music that the younger generation loved and the older generation despised. Stop! 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 Vex-Nine's physical body was now convulsing so violently that the bio-neural chair's restraints began to strain. I cannot take any more. Your mind is an abomination. Abomination? Marcus sounded hurt. That's not very nice. I prefer to think of it as creatively organized. Creatively organized. Like calling a tornado a dynamic weather pattern, or a volcanic eruption a geological enthusiasm. Vex-Nine would have laughed if he hadn't been too busy trying not to lose what remained of his sanity. In the observation chamber, the council members were growing increasingly concerned. Their star telepath was clearly in distress, and they were no closer to extracting useful information from the human than when they started. His neural patterns are becoming increasingly erratic, reported Dr. Klein, the council's chief medical officer. If this continues much longer, we risk permanent psychological damage. Councillor Thane leaned forward. But what could possibly be causing this? It's just one human mind. Vex-Nine has handled far more complex telepathic scenarios. Dr. Klein shook her head, her tentacles writhing with confusion. I'm not sure complex is the right word. The readings I'm getting suggest something more like cognitive overload, as if the human's thought patterns are so chaotic that they're causing a feedback loop in Vex-Nine's telepathic abilities. Chaotic was putting it mildly. At that very moment, Vex-Nine was being subjected to Marcus's internal debate about whether socks that didn't match were a fashion statement or a sign of giving up on life, combined with detailed plans for a sandwich he might make later, memories of every song lyric he had ever misheard, and a growing concern about whether he had offended the alien by calling his mind creatively organized instead of just accepting the abomination comment. You know what the really weird thing is? Marcus continued, apparently oblivious to Vex-Nine's distress. I'm actually trying to keep my thoughts organized right now, out of courtesy for you. Normally, I'd also be thinking about that weird dream I had last week where I was a secret agent whose cover was being a professional butterfly photographer and wondering why my brain decided that was a plausible cover story. Trying to keep organized. This was Marcus being considerate. Vex-Nine felt something fundamental break in his understanding of the universe. The emergency alarms started blaring throughout the detention facility as Vex-Nine's vital signs entered critical territory. His telepathic screams were now so intense that they were interfering with the ship's communication systems. Several junior telepaths in the surrounding sections had already fainted from the psychic overflow. Cut the connection! Now! Councillor Thane barked. But Dr. Klein's tentacles were dancing frantically over the controls. I can't! The neural link has somehow become self-sustaining. It's as if the human's thought patterns have created some kind of psychic vortex. Back in Marcus's mind, Vex-Nine was experiencing what could only be described as the mental equivalent of being caught in a hurricane made of pure, concentrated humanity. Marcus had moved on from sandwiches and social anxiety to something far more dangerous. His memories of every science fiction movie he had ever watched. "Oh, this is fun!" Marcus exclaimed with genuine enthusiasm. "You know what this reminds me of? That old movie where aliens try to probe someone's brain but end up getting overwhelmed by human weirdness. Except that was fiction, and this is real life, which means it's either much cooler or much more terrifying, depending on your perspective. Much more terrifying. Definitely much more terrifying." Vex-Nine tried to retreat deeper into his own consciousness, but Marcus's mind seemed to have infinite depth. Every time he thought he had found the bottom, another layer of complexity revealed itself. "The thing about humans," Marcus continued conversationally, as if he weren't currently driving an advanced alien telepath to the brink of insanity, "is that we never really stop thinking. Even when we're asleep, our brains are still running background processes. Dreams, memory consolidation, random neural firing that sometimes convinces us we've solved all the world's problems in our sleep, only to wake up and realize our brilliant solution was to replace all politicians with trained dolphins. Trained dolphins running governments." The image was so absurd that it briefly short-circuited Vex-Nine's telepathic abilities, giving him a moment of blessed silence before the chaos resumed. "And that's just individual humans," Marcus added helpfully. "Wait until you meet our internet. It's like taking 7 billion human minds and connecting them all together so they can share their random thoughts instantaneously across the entire planet. We call it social media, though social might be generous, and media suggests there's some kind of quality control, which there definitely isn't. 7 billion minds, connected, sharing thoughts." Vex-Nine's scream of pure horror echoed through both dimensions. In the observation chamber, Counselor Vara's compound eyes were reflecting the emergency lighting in a way that suggested she was having some very serious second thoughts about this entire operation. "Dr. Klein, what exactly are we dealing with here?" she asked, her voice carefully controlled. "Based on the neural feedback patterns, I believe we're witnessing the first recorded case of reverse telepathic contamination, Doctor," Klein replied, her medical training barely containing her fascination with the unprecedented situation. "Instead of our telepath reading the subject's mind, the subject's mental patterns are somehow infecting our telepath's cognitive processes." "Infecting?" Counselor Thane looked alarmed. "Are you saying this could spread?" Before Dr. Klein could answer, a new voice crackled over the communication system. It was Vex-Nine, but his usually smooth, confident tone had been replaced by something that sounded disturbingly human. "Hey, has anyone ever noticed that we call it rush hour when nobody's moving?" Vex-Nine's voice was filled with manic confusion. "And why do we have a word for defenestration, throwing someone out of a window, but no word for the specific feeling you get when you realize you've been pronouncing a word wrong your entire life?" The council members exchanged horrified looks. Their star telepath wasn't just having a breakdown. He was starting to think like a human. "Emergency containment protocols!" Vera shouted. "Seal the telepathic wing immediately!" But it was too late. The contamination was already spreading. 2 floors down, junior telepath Zara 7 suddenly found herself wondering why they called it building when it was already built, and whether fish ever got thirsty. 3 decks up, senior mind reader Quill 12 started questioning why abbreviated was such a long word. Meanwhile, in the center of this expanding zone of cognitive chaos, Marcus was having the time of his life. "You know what I just realized?" he said cheerfully to the increasingly distressed Vex-Nine. "You guys probably think telepathy is this elegant, refined ability. But human thoughts aren't elegant or refined. We're basically forcing you to experience the mental equivalent of a food fight in a library during an earthquake." The metaphor was so accurate that Vex-Nine briefly wondered if Marcus might actually be a fellow telepath who was deliberately torturing him. But no, the readings were clear. This was just how humans naturally thought. This chaos, this madness, this beautiful, terrible, impossible multitasking nightmare was completely normal for them. "How do you survive?" Vex-Nine whispered, his voice hoarse from screaming. "How does your species function with minds like this?" "Survive?" Marcus sounded genuinely puzzled. "We don't just survive, we thrive. We've built civilizations, created art, developed technology, explored space, composed symphonies, written poetry, and figured out how to make pizza with stuffed crusts. And we did it all while having brains that operate like a perpetual game of mental ping-pong played by caffeinated squirrels." The stuffed crust pizza comment triggered another cascade of food-related memories, each one spawning dozens of tangential thoughts about cooking, restaurants, food safety, childhood favorites, dietary restrictions, and a heated internal debate about whether a hot dog was technically a sandwich that had been raging in Marcus's subconscious for approximately 12 years. "Stop!" Vex-Nine pleaded. "Please, I will do anything." "Release state secrets, betray the council, reveal our military plans. Just please, make it stop." "Military plans?" Marcus perked up with interest, which somehow made the mental chaos even worse, because now he was simultaneously curious about alien military strategy, while also wondering if they had figured out a way to make spaceships that didn't look like flying metal rectangles. "You know, that's actually kind of flattering that you think I'm trying to extract information from you. I'm just thinking, this is literally just me existing normally. Just existing normally." The casual nature of this revelation hit Vex-Nine like a psychic freight train. This wasn't an interrogation technique or a mental weapon. This was just a human being human, and it was more effective at breaking down telepathic defenses than any torture device ever invented. "Your species," Vex-Nine gasped between sobs, "is absolutely terrifying." "Terrifying?" Marcus laughed, a sound that somehow conveyed both amusement and mild offense. "We're not terrifying. We're just enthusiastic. About everything. All the time. Simultaneously. Enthusiastic about everything simultaneously." Yes, that was exactly the problem. Humans didn't just think about one thing at a time like civilized species. They thought about 17 things at once, cross-referenced them with memories from childhood, analyzed them for potential social awkwardness, wondered if they should have said something different, planned responses to hypothetical future conversations, and somehow still had mental bandwidth left over to notice that the number 17 was prime, and wonder if aliens had discovered mathematics independently, or if there were universal mathematical truths that all intelligent species would inevitably stumble upon. The mathematical tangent spawned thoughts about physics, which led to wondering about alien technology, which circled back to whether aliens found human music annoying, which reminded Marcus of that song he couldn't get out of his head last week, which made him wonder if earworms were a universal phenomenon or just a quirk of human neurology. "Make it stop. Make it stop. Make it stop!" Vex-Nine's mental voice cracked like ice under pressure. "Finally. Mercifully, Doctor." Klein managed to activate the emergency neural dampeners. The connection between Marcus and Vex-Nine snapped like an overstretched rubber band, sending both minds recoiling back into their respective bodies. Vex-Nine collapsed forward in his monitoring chair, his tendrils twitching weakly as he gasped for air. He didn't technically need to breathe. His eyes, when he finally managed to open them, held the haunted look of someone who had seen into the abyss and discovered it was full of random song lyrics and grocery lists. Marcus, meanwhile, blinked a few times and looked around the interrogation chamber with mild interest. "Well, that was fun," he said, conversationally. "Is your friend okay?" "He looks like he needs a nap." "A nap?" After experiencing the most psychologically traumatic event in recorded telepathic history, the human was suggesting their star mind reader needed a nap. Dr. Klein's tentacles curled in what might have been either admiration or horror. In the observation chamber, the council members sat in stunned silence. Their most powerful weapon against alien minds had just been completely neutralized by one human thinking normal human thoughts. "Status report," Counselor Vara managed to croak. Dr. Klein consulted her instruments with shaking appendages. "Vex-Nine is stable, but severely traumatized. His telepathic abilities appear to be intact, but he's requesting immediate psychological counseling and a transfer to a non-telepathic position, preferably something involving minimal contact with sentient beings." "And the contamination?" "Contained, but we now have 17 telepaths across 6 departments who are experiencing what they describe as intrusive human thoughts. They keep asking questions like, why do we park in driveways and drive on parkways? And if a tree falls in a forest and no one is around to hear it, does it make a sound? And more importantly, why do we care?" Counselor Thane rubbed his scaled forehead with one clawed hand. "How long before they recover?" "Unknown. This is completely unprecedented. We may need to develop entirely new therapeutic protocols for telepaths exposed to human cognitive patterns." In the interrogation chamber, Marcus was looking around with the casual interest of a tourist examining local architecture. "So," he said to nobody in particular, "are you guys planning to probe my mind some more? Or can I go? Because I was in the middle of wondering whether aliens have invented a better way to organize sock drawers, and I'd really like to get back to that train of thought." The remaining functional telepaths in the facility all shuddered simultaneously. 24 hours later, the Galactic Council convened an emergency session. The agenda had only one item: what to do about humanity. "The evidence is clear," Counselor Vara announced to the assembled delegates. "Humanity represents a clear and present danger to the mental health of every telepathic species in the galaxy." "Agreed," said Counselor Thane, "but not in the way we originally thought. They're not dangerous because they're aggressive or technologically advanced. They're dangerous because their minds operate on principles that are fundamentally incompatible with telepathic contact." Dr. Klein stepped forward to present her findings. "Based on our analysis of the incident, human consciousness appears to be structured in a way that makes it actively hostile to telepathic intrusion. Not deliberately, but as a natural consequence of their cognitive architecture. It's as if their brains evolved to be the perfect anti-telepathic defense system." "Recommendations?" Vara asked wearily. "Complete isolation," Thane replied immediately. "We establish a quarantine zone around their solar system and forbid any telepathic species from attempting direct mental contact." "Seconded," said Dr. Klein. "We should also issue a galaxy-wide warning about the dangers of human cognitive contact. Any species considering diplomatic relations with humanity should be made aware of the risks." Vara nodded grimly. "Very well. Let the record show that on this date, humanity has been classified as a Class Omega psychic hazard. All telepathic contact is hereby forbidden under penalty of permanent psychological damage." Meanwhile, back on Earth, Marcus Kane was sitting in a debriefing room telling his story to a very interested group of human military officials. "So let me get this straight," said General Patricia Mills, leaning forward with barely contained excitement. "You drove their most powerful telepath insane just by thinking normally?" "Pretty much," Marcus confirmed. "Apparently, human multitasking is like psychological warfare to telepathic species. Who knew?" "This changes everything," breathed Dr. Sarah Hendricks, the chief xenopsychologist. "If human thought patterns are naturally resistant to telepathic intrusion, we might have a significant defensive advantage we never even knew about." Colonel Jake Morrison was already making notes. "We need to study this, figure out how to weaponize it. If we can deliberately focus our chaotic thinking patterns." "Or," interrupted Dr. Hendricks with a sly smile, "we could just be ourselves." Apparently, that's terrifying enough. 6 months later, when the first official diplomatic contact was made between Earth and the Galactic Council, the human delegation was given very specific instructions. Think as much as possible about as many different things as possible, and don't try to organize your thoughts for the sake of alien comfort. The resulting diplomatic summit lasted exactly 47 minutes before the alien delegates politely excused themselves, citing urgent business elsewhere in the galaxy. Humanity was granted immediate membership in the Galactic Council with full autonomy over their solar system. No one wanted to risk another telepathic incident. And Marcus Kane? He became Earth's first ambassador of cognitive warfare, a position that mostly involved him sitting in meetings and thinking about random things while alien diplomats tried very hard not to make eye contact. It was, he often reflected, the perfect job for someone whose mind worked like a food fight in a library during an earthquake. The universe, as it turned out, was a much quieter place when humans were left alone to think their beautifully chaotic thoughts in peace. And everyone was happier that way, especially the telepaths.